You know, what happens during the course of a generation is a lot of times the arguments will change depending on what your favorite brand is doing the best. A good example of this would be back in the Xbox 360 era. Early on, it was all about exclusives because Xbox 360 actually had exclusives. PlayStation 3 struggled mightily with exclusives right out of the gate, and so that was kind of what happened. Then later on in the generation, it changed because PlayStation 3 got exclusives and Xbox 360 struggled to get those. And so, you know, it was like one of those situations that kind of what goes around comes around. Same thing sort of happened with the Xbox One and PS4 generation. Xbox One launched and had the first couple years very, very much a much better and more exclusives than the PlayStation 4. PlayStation 4 struggled mightily, and you know, again, that eventually turned around. The same sort of things are happening right now where you have PlayStation fans kind of dictating what would make a good Xbox showcase, which is ironic considering they were perfectly fine with Sony not having any showcase for 2 years. And then when they did finally have a showcase, it was probably the most lackluster showcase I've ever seen. So yeah, crazy to see that. You know, at the same time, I think that it's one of those situations where Microsoft has totally seen the issues and rectified a lot of it. Okay, but now we look to this other situation with Starfield. Undoubtedly, Microsoft's biggest game of this generation, probably their biggest game in a very long time. This has the opportunity to be the Gears of War, so to speak, of the generation. Each generation, a console gets like a game that could potentially like change the world, and this one looks like it could be that. But there's a big problem looming over it, is the big frame rate debate. Now, there are some rumors going around right now that the game is only going to be 30 frames per second, which would be a bit of a letdown for a lot of people. You had Todd Howard one of those Bethesda people was talking about it. I believe it was Todd Howard was talking about it, and he's like, well, 30 frames is fine for us, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of people took that as them insinuating that it would be 30 frames, but I've always said, you know, let's wait and see for the... let's wait and see what actually is going to be announced, right? Because I will say this for Sony, with their first party, they've always had multiple options for frame rate, and I'm not sure what kind of deal that is, or what kind of strain that puts their developers under. Honestly, I don't know, but it seems like, you know, having the option is great. And even if you have to, even when you look at something like that new Jedi Survivor game, right, the game was, you know, resolution would drop down to 720p, but you still had 60 frames, and due to how upsampling and all that stuff works, it still looks like a good picture. So why couldn't they do that with Starfield? So a lot of people are kind of questioning that, given that we have so many great looking games this generation, and almost all of them have a 60 frames option, and Microsoft did market this console as like this ultimate beast of a machine. You know, again, when I look at this stuff, I look at it from, I guess, a different kind of perspective. I know we're in this generation. I didn't really necessarily go into this generation thinking, oh, everything's going to be 60 frames or everything's going to be 4K. I never go into a generation with preconceived notions like that, because developers have the option and choice to kind of do what they want. But I do see people getting upset, saying they're going to, you know, maybe get a PlayStation if it turns out that it's only a 30 frames mode or whatever. To me, you need to have the option there. I think we're going to find out at the showcase what that's going to be. I think that it makes sense to do that, because it's sort of crazy to me. Like, you know, like with Redfall, we saw was 30 frames. I haven't really seen, Microsoft hasn't really released a ton of games, but even like when you look at Hi-Fi Rush, that only had the 4K 60. There was no other options or anything like that. Deathloop, of course, but that launched on PlayStation first, and same thing with Ghostwire Tokyo. Those games had options, you know, outside of that, so you would figure that all the games would, and, you know, I think everybody is sort of hoping for that, but there is something right now to maybe think that we are going to see Starfield have a 60% or 60 frames option, as Microsoft just released that on the showcase. You can actually watch the show in, it says the show will be streamed out simultaneously on regional Xbox and Bethesda channels around the globe. YouTube and Xbox.com streams, Bethesda streams will be 4K at 60 frames, while other channels will be 1080p at 60. So the Bethesda stream is going to be 4K at 60, while other channels will be 1080p 60. So again, the 60 frames I think is a key talking point here, because there's, in the past, like I can remember specifically when the Xbox One X came out and stuff, they didn't do the 60 frame stream, and even though they were available at the time. So I think that maybe does bode well. They want to showcase this off. Look, I get it. The game's not going to look as good as it would in 30 with all the bells and whistles, but you have to give gamers the option to choose for themselves, because gamers are liking the frame rate. And that's just honestly, I think, like, look, when I went and played God of War Ragnarok, right, and everybody knows I loved God of War 2018. When I went and played God of War Ragnarok, I played it, under the performance mode, and it looked pretty much just as identical to God of War from 2018 graphically, like it did. And that's fine, because that game looks great. It's not like these games look bad, so I think that it's more important to get like the performance up to where expectations are. And even though it's not my expectation per se, it is a lot of other people's, so they have to keep that in mind, that they also advertise this. Also, with the Redfall situation, you could hamper yourself and the game beforehand. People go in with preconceived notions if you don't offer them choices, and that's something that Microsoft really needs to avoid at this particular time. They need to go out there and make sure that everybody has something that they are kind of looking forward to, that they're getting what they really want out of the whole situation. So I hope that they go out there and do that, because let's just be honest, it's on Microsoft. Nobody's going to give them a round of applause for anything less than a stellar show, and these games have to really kind of showcase what the Xbox Series X can honestly do. I think there's a high probability that the game's going to feature a performance mode. Microsoft sent Xbox engineers over a year ago to help optimize this game. So I think we are into that sort of situation. And I, for one, say, hey, that's awesome, because we want those options, right? Who knows what people are going to play it as? Like, I can remember, and I've used this example before, I did a podcast with Mooch when Horizon Forbidden West left. Now, I don't like Horizon Forbidden West. I got about 15 hours in, and I couldn't take it anymore. But what happened was there were like 6, 7, 8 people on the panel. I was the only one playing in performance mode at 60. Everybody else was like, no, it's too ugly. I'm playing at 30. And I'm like, that's crazy. Why would you do that? Like, it's smoother at 60. Just play it like that, And I realize there's a big PC community. They're going to play it whatever frame rate they want or whatever, la-di-da. But I'm talking about us console owners who, bought the world's most powerful console. This is the showcase game. This needs to be a game that has multiple options to run it. So I can understand some of the frustration with the Xbox fans, but I don't want to get overwhelmed with the frustrations of Xbox fans instead of, say, like the PlayStation fans, who are going to just drive this narrative no matter what. So no matter how good, no matter how good this happens to be of a showcase, it could be, they have to reduce the collateral damage of people thinking that, hey, you know what, this is something that of an L, even though they have a win, due to the fact that the game might not be 60 frames or whatever. So I want to see people buy Xboxes, not get rid of them due to a frame rate situation. So if Sony's first party can get those gorgeous looking games out at 60, Microsoft should be able to as well. That's all I'm saying. But don't leave. Let's wait and see, and happen to wait and see what Microsoft has to say. We're counting down the days now. Let me know what you think. Rack 'em up. I'm Crap Gamer. This has been Crap Gamer Reviews. Crap Gamer out.